and now you've got them thinking, and the future's just begun. For you've sown the seeds of freedom in your daughters and your sons.
On the morning of December 21st, 1918, French-Canadian conscripts in the 259th Battalion of the Canadian Expeditionary Force Siberia mutinied here at the corner of Fort and Quadra Street in downtown Victoria. They refused to embark for service in a new theater of war, the Russian port of Vladivostok and Siberia, to aid the White Russian forces fighting the Bolsheviks in the Russian Civil War. The war on the Western Front had ended 6 weeks earlier, prompting sharp debates within Canadian society and within the military force itself. But at the point of the bayonet, the mutinous men were forced to embark for Russia, exceeding the powers granted under Canada's conscription law, the Military Service Act of 1917. The ringleaders were shackled together in the bottom of the ship, the SS Teesta, and they received sentences of between 30 days and 3 years imprisonment with hard labor for, quote, joining in a mutiny while on active service in His Majesty's armed forces.
Le matin du 21 décembre 1918, des conscripts canadiens français du 259e bataillon de la Force expéditionnaire canadienne Sibérie se sont mutinés au camp de rue Fort et Quadra au centre-ville de Victoria. Ils refusaient d'embarquer vers un nouveau théâtre de guerre, le port russe de Vladivostok et la Sibérie, pour aider les forces de Russes blancs qui luttaient contre les Bolcheviks dans le cadre de la guerre civile russe. La guerre sur le front ouest était terminée depuis 6 semaines, occasion d'après débat à l'intérieur de la société canadienne et des forces militaires elles-mêmes. Cependant, le mutin fut forcé à la pointe de la baïonnette d'embarquer pour la Russie. Cet ordre outrepassait les pouvoirs accordés par la loi canadienne sur la conscription, l'acte de service militaire de 1917. Les organisateurs furent enchaînés les uns aux autres dans le cale de navire SS Teesta et reçurent des sentences d'emprisonnement avec travaux forcés, variant de 30 jours à 3 ans, pour s'être joint à mutinerie alors qu'il était en service actif dans les forces armées de Sa Majesté.
Edgar Lebel was 21 years old and a farmer from Saint-Epiphaine, Quebec. He received a sentence of 28 days field punishment that he served at the Field Punishment Center in Vladivostok, Russia.
Edgar Lebel, 21 ans, fermier de Saint-Epiphaine, Québec, fut condamné au fer et au menon pendant 28 jours. Sa sentence fut exécutée au centre de détention de Vladivostok.
Léonce Roy was a 22-year-old farmer from Saint-Epiphaine, Quebec. He was sentenced to 30 days field punishment.
Léonce Roy, 22 ans, également fermier de Saint-Epiphaine, Québec, fut condamné au fer et au menon pendant 30 jours.
Silvio Gilbert was a 20-year-old laborer from Jonquière, Quebec. He was sentenced to 90 days field punishment in Vladivostok.
Silvio Gilbert, 20 ans, journalier de Jonquière, Québec, fut condamné au fer et menon pendant 90 jours à Vladivostok.
Edmund Posé was 30 years old, a blacksmith from Joliette, Quebec. He was sentenced to 6 months at hard labor for joining a mutiny. During his detention, he was hospitalized for 10 days with a ruptured spine. His commanding officer referred to him as, quote, one of the best soldiers in my company.
Edmond Posé, 30 ans, forgeron de Joliette, Québec, fut condamné à 6 mois de travaux forcés pour s'être joint à une mutinerie. Pendant sa détention, il fut hospitalisé pour une période de 10 jours souffrant d'une fracture de la colonne vertébrale. Son commandant le désignait comme un des meilleurs soldats de ma compagnie.
Joseph Guinard was 19 years old at the time of the mutiny. He had been a plumber in Quebec City when he was conscripted. He was found guilty of joining a mutiny and sentenced to 6 months at hard labor.
Joseph Joinard avait 19 ans au moment de la mutinerie. Il était plombier dans la ville de Québec au moment de la conscription. Jugé coupable de s'être joint à une mutinerie, il fut condamné à 6 mois de travaux forcés.
Edmund Leroux was a 22-year-old lumberjack from Saint-Apolline, Quebec. He refused to obey a direct order to fall in here at this intersection and was convicted of willful disobedience and sentenced to 1 year at hard labor.
Edmond Leroux, 22 ans, était bûcheron à Saint-Apolline, Québec. Il refusa d'obéir aux ordres, fut jugé coupable de désobéissance et condamné à une an de travaux forcés.
O'Neill Boisvert was 22 years old and had been a farmer in Drummond, Quebec before conscription. He was sentenced to 2 years at hard labor for allegedly shouting, quote, "On y va pas en Sibérie." We will not go to Siberia. He had refused to sign the consent form for Siberia because, quote, as a farmer, he would be more useful at home.
O'Neill Boisvert était 22 ans, fermier dans Drummond, Québec. Il fut condamné à 2 ans de travaux forcés pour avoir soi-disant crié « On n'y va pas en Sibérie ». Il avait refusé de signer le formulaire de consentement pour le service en Sibérie, allégeant qu'en tant que fermier, il serait plus utile chez lui.
Alfred Laplante had been a mechanic in Richelieu, Quebec, and was just 23 years old. While several witnesses identified him as a ringleader of the mutiny, he insisted, quote, he never joined or caused a mutiny. During his pre-trial incarceration, he was not permitted to bathe or change underwear for 38 days, at the height of the Spanish flu epidemic. He was sentenced to 2 years at hard labor.
Alfred Laplante, 23 ans, était mécanicien à Richelieu, Québec. Plusieurs témoins l'identifieront comme un des organisateurs de la mutinerie. Il insistait qu'il ne s'était jamais joint à ni causé de mutinerie. Au cours de l'incarcération précédant son procès, on ne lui permet pas de se laver ou de changer de sous-vêtements pendant 38 jours. Il fut condamné à 2 ans de travaux forcés.
Arthur Roy was a sawmaker from Montreal in peacetime and was 23 years old. On a streetcar returning to the Willows camp the night before the mutiny, he was overheard saying that Canada, quote, had no right to fight against the Bolsheviks. He was accused of being the ringleader of the mutiny and was given the harshest sentence, 3 years penal servitude. In April 1919, as the soldiers prepared to return from Russia, questions arose in the House of Commons in Ottawa about the legality of deploying conscripts for the Siberian expedition. As a result, the sentences of the 9 ringleaders of the mutiny were quietly suspended by the commanding officer in Vladivostok. Today, we call upon the Government of Canada to posthumously pardon these men, all conscripts, and to formally apologize to their surviving family members.
Canada was facing a very similar situation as today. What is our role in the world? Now, there were conservatives and militarists in our population. Indeed, our Prime Minister, was Robert Borden, was of the view that every time British imperialism called out for assistance in some part of the world, in Afghanistan or in Africa or in some other part of the world where they were fighting, that Canada should respond by saying, "Ready, I ready." And the conservatives and militarists in Canada of that day said, yes, this was Canada's duty. Canadians should respond and should be ready to, and don't want to be dominated by US imperialism. That's why this campaign for a pardon for these 9 men and an apology to their survivors is an important part of recognizing our role in Canada in the world today. And we must say, we will not go to Siberia just as they did. We will not go to Iran, we will not go to Pakistan, we will not go to any other countries to answer the call of imperialism.
If I had a bell, I'd ring it in the morning, I'd ring it in the evening, over this land. I'd ring out a danger, I'd ring out a warning, I'd ring out the love between my brothers and my sisters.